When Cheryl Miller speaks, people listen because she knows the cost of silence. In her blistering comments on Caitlin Clark's benching, Miller peels back the carefully managed image of Team USA to expose a web of favoritism and institutional fear. She paints Clark not as a victim, but as a threat to the system, a player whose very success challenges outdated hierarchies. The message is uncomfortable but necessary. Clark is being penalized not for what she lacks, but for what she represents.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
A future that doesn't ask permission from the past. This isn't just about basketball politics, it's about power. Clark's treatment reflects a broader resistance to new voices that shift the narrative. Miller's stance underscores how institutions react when influence doesn't come from the usual suspects. From muted officiating to media spin, the resistance is subtle but targeted. Miller's credibility gives her the leverage to call out. And in doing so, she pushes the conversation beyond Clark, demanding that women's basketball confront the invisible rules that continue to govern who gets to lead and who gets left behind. Cheryl Miller has never been one to hold back. She's walked the walk, talked the talk, and dominated in an era where women's basketball wasn't getting half the respect it deserved. So when she speaks out, especially now, people take notice. Because this time, she's not just sounding off about a player. She's exposing the inner workings of a system that's been running on favoritism, hierarchy, and outdated politics for way too long. And that system just got put on blast. It's what sparked all this. Caitlin Clark, the most disruptive, high-impact, ratings-grabbing player women's basketball has seen in years. Clark's talent isn't up for debate. She's been dropping dimes, sinking logo threes, and selling out arenas like it's second nature. And yet, when Team USA announced their roster plans, Caitlin Clark's name wasn't on the Olympic shortlist. She got benched, just like that. But this isn't about a young player being passed over for lack of experience. That's the convenient excuse floating around. Cheryl Miller isn't buying it, and neither should anyone else who's been paying attention. Miller came out swinging. She didn't just question the decision. She tore the curtain down on why it was made. According to her, this wasn't a basketball move. It was politics, plain and simple. A coordinated effort by Team USA officials and the broader basketball establishment to keep Clark in check. Because let's be real, Caitlin Clark doesn't fit the mold. She doesn't wait her turn. She doesn't play it safe. She breaks the system by being too good, too fast. And for some people at the top, that's a threat. Clark is a disruptor, and disruptors don't get embraced by old hierarchies. They get managed. Marginalized. Controlled. Miller's point was clear. The second Clark became the face of the sport, the institutions built to protect the status quo kicked into gear. Her benching wasn't about readiness. It was about fear. Fear that Clark would outshine the veterans. Fear that she'd steal the spotlight from players the system had already chosen. Fear that she'd change the game before the Olympics even started. And honestly, that fear is valid, because that's exactly what she's done. Let's talk numbers. Clark's games brought in record-breaking ratings. Her name trends even when she's not playing. Merchandise? Flying off the shelves. Her presence alone turns casual viewers into full-on fans. That kind of influence isn't typical. It's not even common. It's once in a generation. And that's why she's being held back. According to Miller, the resistance isn't just institutional. It's deeply personal. It's jealousy. It's ego. It's watching a young player rise faster than you ever did, and knowing she didn't need to play the political game to get there. And that bruises egos. It rattles the veterans. It upsets the balance that certain people have spent years trying to maintain. That's why Clark gets officiated differently. That's why the hard fouls get brushed off. That's why she gets less protection on the court. It's not just oversight, it's systemic. She's being told to earn her place in ways that others never had to. Because she's not just competing on the hardwood. She's challenging a whole structure that's allergic to change. And here's where Cheryl Miller's voice matters more than ever. She's not some outsider looking in. She's someone who's seen these politics play out for decades. She's someone who's lived the tension between talent and tradition. And when she says this treatment of Clark is rooted in sexism, favoritism, and power preservation, you believe her. Because she knows exactly what it looks like when institutions punish excellence that doesn't come pre-approved. This isn't just about Clark missing out on the Olympics. It's about what her exclusion represents. It's a warning to any young player who threatens the hierarchy too quickly. Step out of line, gain too much influence, and the system will remind you who's really in charge. Clark's rapid rise didn't come with the system's blessing. It came from outside of it. She brought in fans who don't care about politics. She made the game more exciting, more accessible, more relevant. She turned Iowa into a basketball destination. And for that, instead of being embraced, she's being sidelined. Because if they let her in, the old guard loses its grip, and that grip is tight. Cheryl Miller made it clear. What we're seeing is the sport resisting evolution. Team USA had the perfect opportunity to adapt, to show the world they recognize what the future of the sport looks like. And instead, they chose familiarity. They chose comfort. They chose to maintain a pecking order that's starting to look less like tradition and more like obstruction. And let's not ignore the generational and cultural tension bubbling underneath this. Caitlin Clark represents a new kind of athlete, media-savvy, fan-driven, and unapologetically influential. She didn't wait for coverage. She became the coverage. And older institutions, they're not built for that kind of player. They're built for control, for narratives they can direct, for stars they can manage. Clark doesn't fit that mold, and that's the problem. What Cheryl Miller is doing here isn't just commentary, it's accountability. She's not just defending Clark. She's forcing everyone watching to confront the system's hypocrisy, the favoritism, the selective gatekeeping, the kind of quiet manipulation that's kept fresh talent in check for years under the guise of paying your dues. Because the truth is, Clark's already paid her dues, just not in the way the establishment wanted. She earned her spotlight by dominating on the court, building a massive audience, and changing how people engage with women's basketball. And for that, she's been met not with celebration, but with resistance. Miller's words cut through the noise. She's saying what fans, analysts, and even some players have been too cautious to say out loud. This isn't about talent. It's about control. And that's what makes this moment so important. Because now the system doesn't just have to deal with Clark, it has to deal with the conversation she sparked. It has to answer to fans who are done pretending everything is fair. It has to reckon with the fact that the sport is shifting with or without its approval. So what happens next? The benching isn't the end of Caitlin Clark's story. It's the beginning of a much bigger fight. And Cheryl Miller just handed her the microphone. This isn't just about one player. It's about whether women's basketball will evolve or retreat, whether it will welcome its next chapter or try to delay it until it's too late. Clark didn't ask to be a symbol, but here we are. And Miller just made it clear that silencing her won't be easy. Now it's your turn. Drop a comment below. Do you think this was about experience or something deeper? Should the system make room for game changers like Clark, or keep following the old rules? If you're ready for more unfiltered breakdowns like this, hit that like button, subscribe to stay in the loop, and share this with someone who needs to hear the truth. Because as long as the system keeps resisting change, we'll be right here breaking it down. And let's not forget, this isn't just a Team USA issue. It's a women's basketball issue. What happened to Caitlin Clark is just one example of a pattern that's been playing out quietly for years. But because Clark is such a high-profile figure, because she's so visible, so marketable, so undeniably impactful, the injustice becomes impossible to ignore. That's why Cheryl Miller's voice lands like thunder. She's not just defending a player who got left off a roster. She's throwing a spotlight on the rot that lives in the foundation of the sport. She's calling out the favoritism, the double standards, the political maneuvering that too often gets brushed off as business as usual. Because if Caitlin Clark can be benched after everything she's accomplished, what message does that send to every other young player watching? Work hard, be great, break records, fill arenas, drive the biggest ratings the sport has ever seen, and still get told you're not ready? Nah, this isn't just a snub. It's a warning shot. It says, you can be great, but not too great, at least not yet. It says, know your place. It says, wait until we're ready for you. But Clark didn't wait. She didn't follow the prescribed timeline. She became the face of the sport without playing the system's game. And the system responded by slamming the door. That's what Miller is calling out. She's saying the quiet part out loud. That women's basketball isn't as open and progressive as it likes to present itself. That behind the social media campaigns and carefully crafted narratives is an establishment still clinging to control, still afraid of change, still unwilling to relinquish power, even when it's obvious the game is evolving. And make no mistake, this isn't about Clark being too young or needing more experience. That would be easier to swallow if the metrics didn't completely destroy that argument. She's already changed how the game is covered. Her games draw more viewers than some NBA broadcasts. She's leading the conversation around women's basketball on every platform, from ESPN to TikTok. She's a magnet for fan engagement, media attention, and cultural relevance. What more do they need? Apparently, they need her to be quiet, to be smaller, to wait in line behind people with less impact, less momentum, and, let's be real, less pressure on her shoulders. And when Cheryl Miller stepped up to challenge that, that wasn't just about defending one player. That was about defending the future of the sport. She's seen what happens when young talent gets suffocated by egos. She's seen how institutional politics eat away at opportunity. She knows the cost of silence, because she's lived it. Folder not found. Create new folder, Cheryl Miller. Cheryl Miller knows what it feels like to be the best and still be told you're too much. Too bold, too dominant, too disruptive. That's why she's speaking up now, because she recognizes the pattern. And she's not letting it play out again with someone who's already done more for the sport than most players will in a lifetime. The question becomes, how long can the gatekeepers hold out? Because fans are watching. Social media is watching. The world is watching. And they're not buying the excuses anymore. You can't preach about growing the game while sidelining the player who's growing it the most. You can't claim to support women's sports while punishing a woman for excelling too much. You can't say you want change and then recoil the second it arrives. And Cheryl Miller is the one grabbing the mic and reminding everyone of that. She's not asking. She's demanding a reckoning. She's challenging the hypocrisy head-on. And in doing so, she's giving voice to what so many people have felt but were too afraid to say. That the system doesn't want stars, it wants servants. Players who will smile, follow the script, and not threaten the hierarchy. And when someone like Caitlin Clark breaks that mold, when she becomes bigger than the system can control, the system doesn't celebrate it. It clamps down. But it's too late for that now. Because Clark's influence has already outpaced the institutions trying to contain her. She's already bigger than the benching. And now, because of Cheryl Miller's spotlight, the real conversation has begun. Not about whether Clark should be on the Olympic team, but about why she isn't. And that conversation, that's the real threat. Because it opens up everything. Why do the same voices get to dominate year after year, even when their impact wanes? Why is there more scrutiny on a rookie who breaks records than on officials who ignore blatant fouls? Why do younger players have to prove themselves 10 times over just to be considered, while veterans are protected by a system that rewards longevity over relevance? These are the questions Miller forced into the open, and they're uncomfortable. They challenge power. They disrupt comfort. They make people defensive. Good, because progress should be uncomfortable. It should rattle cages. And Clark's rise has done exactly that. But now the spotlight is just as much on the system as it is on her. Because fans aren't going to let this go. They've seen the bias. They've seen the favoritism. And thanks to voices like Miller, they understand it now. This moment is pivotal. Team USA had a chance to lead with vision. To build a team that reflected where the game is going, not where it's been. And instead, they showed us exactly what they're afraid of, a future they can't control. But the thing is, that future is coming whether they like it or not. The next generation of players? They're watching Caitlin Clark and taking notes. They're seeing how talent is received when it doesn't wait for permission. They're seeing the gatekeeping for what it is. And they won't forget. So when Miller stepped into this conversation, she wasn't just defending a star. She was declaring a shift. One that says enough is enough. That talent doesn't need to be tamed. That influence isn't a liability. That change is not the enemy. Clark's absence from the Olympic roster won't stop her momentum. It'll only accelerate the conversation. And with voices like Cheryl Miller backing her, that conversation isn't dying down anytime soon. This isn't about one tournament. It's not even about one player. It's about whether women's basketball is finally ready to confront its own reflection, to admit that it's been playing defense against progress, to own up to the politics that silence rising stars. And thanks to Cheryl Miller, the silence has been broken. And honestly, there shouldn't be any turning back, because the line has been drawn. Caitlin Clark didn't just expose cracks in the system. She blew them wide open. And now that Cheryl Miller has stepped into the fight, the people in charge don't just have a PR problem, they've got a credibility crisis. Let's call it what it is. This was a calculated move to protect a fragile hierarchy. A hierarchy built on tradition, not truth. On comfort, not competition. And for years, it worked. The same players got the same spots. The same coaches made the same calls. Rookies were told to wait in the wings while the spotlight stayed glued to those who earned it the slow, acceptable way. But then came Clark, rewriting the rules just by being too good to ignore. She showed up, played her game, and captured the world's attention, without ever asking for permission. She didn't need a marketing push. She didn't need a carefully controlled narrative. All she needed was a basketball, a logo 3, and a sold-out crowd. Again, and again, and again. And that's what scared them. Because no system, especially one built on seniority and status quo, wants to admit that someone can break through faster and louder without playing by its rules. Clark wasn't supposed to be the face of the sport yet. Not this soon. Not before the Olympics. Not before the vets got their last moment in the sun. But she is the face. And no amount of benching or silence can change that now. That's why Cheryl Miller's voice hits so hard. She's not confused by what's happening. She's not tiptoeing around it. She's been inside the machine. She's seen how it chews up innovation and spits out excuses. So when she says this isn't about basketball, it's because she knows it never was. This is about power, control, and the politics of who's allowed to shine. And it's not just a slap in the face to Clark. It's a disservice to the fans, to the thousands of new viewers who showed up because of her, to the little girls who finally saw someone who looked like them dominating headlines and highlight reels, to the people who actually believed women's basketball was ready to evolve. Because the truth is, this could have been a turning point. Team USA had a golden opportunity to lean into the future, to embrace the momentum, to showcase the next generation on the biggest stage possible. Instead, they protected the past. They sent a message. We're not ready for someone like her. Not yet. And that's the kind of thinking that keeps the sport small. You want to know why people tune out? Why growth stalls? Why the same conversations about visibility and respect keep repeating themselves? This is why. Because when the most relevant, most buzzworthy, most watched player gets benched over politics, the fans notice. The public notices. And they don't forget. Cheryl Miller sees that. And that's why she's not sitting this one out. She knows how dangerous silence can be. How damaging it is when legends turn their backs on rising stars in order to protect their own legacy. She's choosing not to do that. She's using her platform to say what too many insiders are afraid to. The system isn't broken. It was built this way. And now it's being exposed. The favoritism, the selective outrage, the officiating double standards. The "she's not ready" narrative that's only ever used when someone is ready but doesn't play the political game. Clark has been targeted on the court. She's been given less protection, more physicality, and fewer calls. And all of that has been brushed off under the guise of rookie hazing or earning stripes. Let's stop pretending that's normal. Let's stop acting like that's just part of the game. It's not. It's part of a structure designed to make sure players like Clark know their place. But Clark didn't come to fit in. She came to take over. And that's the real threat. She's changing the math. When she's on the floor, the audience doubles. The media coverage triples. The jerseys sell out, and that makes her valuable, which makes her powerful, which makes her a problem for people who don't want to share that power. And that's what Cheryl Miller is really calling out. She's not just backing Clark. She's forcing everyone else to take a side. Are you with the future of the game, or are you clinging to the past? Are you ready to let the next generation lead, or are you going to gatekeep until the fans walk away? Because fans are already making their decision. They showed up for Clark, not for the system. They filled arenas to watch her. They tuned in, they bought tickets, they posted clips. She brought them to the sport. And now that she's being sidelined, they're not mad, they're furious. And they're not confused. They get it. The politics are obvious. The silence from other players? Deafening. The vague, overly diplomatic statements from officials? Transparent. The system is trying to ride the wave Clark created without giving her the credit or the platform she deserves. But that's not going to work anymore. Because you can't mute someone who has already become the loudest voice in the room. Caitlin Clark didn't ask to be the face of this movement. But thanks to how she's been treated, she is the movement now. And with Cheryl Miller co-signing her, with someone that respected backing her so openly, so unapologetically, it's game over for the people trying to pretend this is business as usual. This is not business as usual. This is a reckoning, a breaking point, and the fans are done playing along. You can't say you support women's sports and then punish the very players who are taking it to the next level. You can't say you want change and then shut down the changemakers. You can't build a platform on progress and then pull the ladder up the second someone climbs too fast. Cheryl Miller just kicked that ladder back down. Hard. And now we get to watch what the system does next. Do they double down? Do they spin the narrative? Do they pretend Clark's exclusion was just a tough call? Or do they finally admit what we all already know, that this wasn't about readiness? It was about power. So now, the real question, are we going to let that stand? Because if you care about the future of women's basketball, this is your moment too. Speak up, comment, share. Let the people in charge know they can't sideline progress and expect applause. Clark isn't going anywhere, and neither is this conversation. And now, thanks to Cheryl Miller, the whole world is watching. Hit that like button. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more stories that cut through the noise and speak the truth. Because this isn't just drama. It's a movement, and we're just getting started.